and we are fortunate enough to have the best immigration lawyer that I know, and in this town, Joseph Patrick Murphy, with the Allegheny Immigration Group. Joseph, good morning, sir. How are you?
Great, Marty. Thanks for having me on.
I know I gave you a 2-minute warning, but you're that smart. Your immediate reaction, Joseph?
Well, I mean, it's consistent with the history of, in terms of birthright citizenship, that was part of what are called the Civil War amendments, the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendment. These were designed to redress some of the evils that led to the Civil War. And when the war ended, they had to consider what would happen to the slaves because they didn't have any bloodline citizenship. No, well, some of them did, but by then, but ultimately the vast majority of them didn't, and they would have effectively have been illegal aliens. So they said that anyone that was born or naturalized in the United States is a citizen, and that right of soil effectively made the freed slave citizens as opposed to non-citizens. So there had to be something like that, but we're 150 years later now.
Amazing.
And of course this has led to all sorts of distortions and unintended consequences. You've got these whole hotels full of people that are in the United States to have a baby and then go home, so the baby is an American. So it's been abused, and I don't think...
That's amazing that you as an immigration lawyer would admit that, because it's true, right, Joseph?
I don't think it's an admission. I think it's just an observation. I mean, I don't encourage this sort of behavior, but I think that it gets tougher because kids are born here, and they, maybe the parents entered illegally. You've got the DACA kids, which is really a compelling, emotional thing where they've kind of, integrated into our society. They grew up here. They don't know the language of the home country, and obviously, those are kids who were born in Latin America, most of them, not in the United States. The case for gentility toward children that were born here and grew up here, I think, would be more compelling than like these cases where people like literally only give birth here and the kid doesn't know English, never grows up here, and they go back to
What about immigrants who come here illegally, have a baby here, and as a result they're citizens? What happens to them, sir?
Well, it doesn't really work that way. There's the kind of common slur, anchor baby. Obviously, at least under the law up until quite recently, like today, the baby would be a citizen, but that does not automatically confer citizenship onto the parents. Those parents can still be deported. If they're truly unlawfully present, they can still be deported. And in many cases, if the children are quite small, they'll elect to take the child back to them, leading to stories that the babies are being deported or citizens are being deported. But that's the parents' decision. I don't know if that's responsive, but that's my thoughts.
Joseph Patrick Murphy, Allegheny Immigration Group. Does this end birthright citizenship, sir, or will there be further debate here? Because it doesn't sound as if it does.
Right. Well, the case is about the ability of federal district courts to issue injunctions that cover the whole country. In this case, there was an injunction against President Trump's executive order against birthright citizenship, and a district court had issued a decision that affected really everyone. The court said that they can't do that anymore. It's their equity. Potentially say that this specific person can't be denied birthright citizenship if that specific person is suing to invalidate the EO, but they can't do it on a nationwide basis. That also potentially makes sense. I haven't thought much about it. It did always bother me that a judge that had a district was giving opinions that had effects outside of it. That seems to be out of jurisdiction, but that has been the practice for a long time. Birthright citizenship happens to be the issue that this came to a head over, so it appears to be potentially a double win for President Trump.
It does.
Yeah.
Joseph Patrick Murphy, I got to ask you this while I have you here, and I tried to grab you yesterday.
Sure.
So much controversy now about, and both sides of it, sir, about ICE and making arrests and shutting down a restaurant in Cranberry and arresting 14 people.
Right.
Is there a fear factor in the immigrant community, so that at any place, any time, they could get snatched up off the streets?
Yes, there is. I hear the calls all the time. People are afraid to go to things, even routine matters. They want lawyers to go with them to get a driver's license. It's unbelievable, but I believe that the environment of fear is being intentionally curated by unpredictable enforcement, these lightning strikes. Nobody knows where it's going to hit next. And in a sense, that's a force multiplier for the government. They don't have a lot of removal agents. I think there's probably
They don't.
5,500 in the whole country. So they have to mass and create disruption, hit restaurants and stuff like that, and then move on to the next town. But they don't announce when they're showing up in yours or when they're leaving. And the environment of fear can linger long after and even long before the actual actions take place. And that, I believe, is by design, because people that get scared into going home voluntarily, it's much more cost effective, it's much more time effective.
It is, sir.
And frankly, it's much less dangerous. When you have to physically arrest people, that's an inherently kinetic matter. It can be dangerous. These are trained agents, scared migrants, people running, people getting tackled. So if we're going to do this, and I think the country has voted to do that, perhaps self-deportation, particularly for people who don't have a lot of immigration options, unfortunately might be the least dangerous way.
It's fascinating you should say this, because a construction company owner sent me a note while we were talking. He said, I had Hondurans that were here illegally. Mm-hmm. They voluntarily deported, said to hell with it. I'm not going to mess with it.
Right.
It's happening, isn't it, sir?
It is, and I've never seen it before. I mean, I've been practicing immigration law since the INS, since before the modern immigration system. I've never, ever, until the last year, had a client ask me about that. How do I get out of here voluntarily? Yeah.
And do they get the $1,000, sir?
You can. I mean, people that entered the country unlawfully and stayed in the country unlawfully, they get a black mark against their immigration record. If you enter this country without permission, you are what's called inadmissible. You cannot be let back in. And even if you take the $1,000 and go home voluntarily, if you ever applied for a visa, they would say you're inadmissible. You have to get a forgiveness for that unlawful entry. Those can be given and granted. But I think the $1,000 probably makes sense. Some of these people don't have enough money on hand to actually make the trip.
True.
So to the extent that the government would give them a little bit of money, again, that's cheaper than the whole process of arresting them, housing them, having a deportation hearing, housing them after the deportation hearing, and then having, Homeland Security contractors accompany them home on an airliner. If you can get people to do that voluntarily, it's probably worth it to the government to give them $1,000 on top of it.
Joseph Patrick Murphy, you're amazing, man. Thank you, sir. You're the best.
Anytime, Marty. Always a pleasure to talk with you.
Great information.
All the news you need for your day and the sports, music, and podcasts you love.